Hello, everyone, and welcome to another match of Littlewargame. Today, I am bringing you a game that I played in. I'm playing the red pieces here in the top left corner, and the map we're playing on is Ravaged AA4. Today, I am bringing you a game that is played against this opponent that I haven't faced before until today. So this is Ynffr. I think it's either Ynffr or Ynffr or Ynffr. I don't know. Maybe if someone in the comments wants to tell me exactly how that pronunciation is, but I'll just go ahead and call him Ynffr for this game. So this is actually the second game that we played together. The first game that we played, Ynffr went for a beast all-in. And then he won that way because I basically wasn't ready for a beast all-in, and so this is the rematch after that game. So since I know my opponent went beast beforehand, I basically assume he's going to go for the same strategy. So what I like to do against beast all-ins is I like to play beast myself. I kind of like to counter their strategy with my strategy. From how this might not be true, and I think with a little bit more experience, this might actually change. But I think with the standard opening and going for a raider, going for those two raiders just might not be enough versus 5 wolves that are going to constantly come and ramp up the damage and just pour into the base. So what I decided to go for is I decided to go for a very fast expand. So I built a house as quickly as I could, brought the worker back, and then had all my workers mine. And then as soon as I could afford it, I built a second castle. And then as soon as I could afford a watchtower, I built a watchtower at my second base location to basically protect my second base here and to ward off any intruders. And basically the idea is that if I have this watchtower going up by around 2 minutes and 40 something seconds, it should be complete and in time to stop any proxies. So for my opponent, he decides to go for a house into barracks, and then from that point he's producing soldiers, definitely trying to ward off any all-in that I might do in retaliation to the game that we had just played. Besides that, he's getting his second base, I'm getting my second base, so besides that point, we should be on a pretty good setting here. Really quickly, you want to see what my opponent is up to. So he's getting a second barracks, and he's producing. For me, I'm producing, and I'm producing in this kind of wall fashion. If he was to go for an all-in, in order for him to get into my base and attack this watchtower, he would have to come around, and then he would only be able to attack from this area where I could easily pull my workers and surround his force. So I thought I did a good job. It also reduces the surface area available for any units to attack this watchtower. So I feel like it's in a good spot as it's able to protect my workers and it's able to cover these buildings at the front. So essentially, I get my first couple wolves out. I'm planning on just going for full wolf production, at least until I know what my opponent is trying to do. I see obviously that he has some units at home, and that he's got some buildings here. From this, I can assume that my opponent has got a second base up and going. And so for me, what I basically decide to do is once I see that my opponent is not going for a third base at any particular point, I decide to go for a greedy third base. And the reason why this is greedy is because at this point, my opponent has 3 soldiers and 2 archers versus my 4 wolves, and this unit composition definitely beats 4 wolves. So if my opponent wanted to, he could definitely march on the other side of the map, and I would really be I'd really have to defend against that position. So I do decide to play a little bit greedy, but the reason I do this is because I want to keep the pressure on. Since I took this third base, eventually I'll have the economy. Like I spent for more economy than army, but eventually I'll have the resources to put into army rather than economy. And so these wolves are basically in this location to show me show me when my opponent wants to move out. If there's any units, I have all my army rallied onto the other side of the map. And now that I've got my 3 bases up and running, I decide to throw on 2 more wolf dens. So that'll bring 4 dens worth of production. And as we can see, my unit count just keeps rising, especially as I continuously build workers. At this point, I've got 26 workers to my opponent's 15, which means that I've got almost twice as much production as my opponent at this point. That is something that I think this opponent here in the blue would need to work on a little bit more. But at this point, we can see that he's got a very strong army. He's got plenty of archers. He's got plenty of soldiers. He's got 3 barracks production on 2 bases. So definitely prioritizing being safe and having this army at home. But I think that his army should be on the map, as he should like try and scout, kind of like what he's doing right now. So either to scout or to put some pressure on. And so, like I said, these units are here to basically monitor when my opponent is moving out. This clumped up force is kind of inflexible. So whenever my opponent decides to defend, one area, I can move in with the next area, do a little bit of harassment, like I did. I lost some units for free, but it's basically all in the name of keeping my opponent at home. And so at this point, I go for a 4th base. I see that my opponent is, he's still on 2 bases. He hasn't made a 3rd yet, and so I'm starting to get to the point where it's like I have resources and access. I need to, spend it on something. And so typically what I like to do is when I get my 4th base, I like to also throw down some upgrade buildings. So in this case, I'm playing Beast, so the animal testing lab, and throw 2 of those down to start researching attack and defense upgrades, while at the same time going for this fortress and macroing into dragons at a point. So at this point, I do see that my opponent's got a 3rd base going. I know I'm economically ahead. Still, I've got 4 bases to my opponent's, soon to be 3. But I know that at this point, I've been playing so greedy that he's still got a much better, much larger army than I do. And so I decide, out of these units, I'm going to do a little bit of scouting, have them, probe a little bit, and then if I felt like his main army was over here, I could go ahead and pressure with this army, and so I just get a little bit more pressure on. My opponent at this point does something that I've not seen most players do. He decides to get a bird, and birds are kind of okay. They really don't achieve anything except for having information on the map, and you could easily do that with some of the units that you already have. I definitely think that producing a bird instead of producing a worker is not the way to go. My opponent could definitely be producing more workers and thus becoming, or more workers thus being in a better economic spot. So let me go ahead and see if I've produced any dragons at this point. No, it doesn't look like I have, even though these 2 layers are up. And so now at this point, I finally get some dragons on the production line and ready to go. Looks like I am a little bit supply blocked. So once I'm not supply blocked, once these houses finish up, then I will have some dragons coming up on the supply line and ready to go. I see my opponent's got a watchtower at his third base. So this was me more of trying to, seeing that I had a pretty big beast army, and I wanted to do something with it. So I put a little bit more pressure on my opponent by attacking him from 2 areas. I do end up killing this watchtower with this last wolf. So that's kind of it's not gonna make my opponent lose the game or lose his third, but it will force him to make another tower. It will force him to keep his army next to his third, or else he's gonna be worried that I might do another run by him, and thus he might lose it. So at this point, I do have more dragons coming out. I decide to go for 2 additional upgrade facilities, so 2 more testing labs, and then I also decide to go for some tech. And so this is something I'm experimenting with, but I also heard was very strong. I heard that priests and beast play were very strong, as you could really group your beast units together and really cause a lot of damage. And so essentially all I'm trying to do is hit my opponent from all sides. As you can see, though, I'm only doing this with a small, like, guerrilla force units. They're not large enough to be considered dangerous towards these units at my opponent's base. But the fact that I can do multi-pronged harass with that mobility really is going to cause my opponent to stay back on 3 bases. I get a 5th, and then as you can see, my plentiful upgrades, I'm doing them 4 at a time now, essentially, and that's a really big advantage for me at this point. It basically means that I'm going to be able to have my units become even stronger continuously. Sadly, my opponent, he does get a forge, but I don't believe he's got any upgrades on the way. He does have range, which is great for his archers. It's fantastic, but no attack upgrades, sadly, at this point. Looks like my opponent does go for a tech switch, so he wants to build some gyrocraft, which is probably the reason for this mill. Probably should have covered that a little bit more. And at this point in the game, I decide to use my dragons a little bit better than just staying idle. Hopefully, at this point, I'm hoping that I can deal a lot of damage to his main base while harassing his third base with these units and attacking my opponent's army with this unit, especially while he's distracted. So I see his archers at this point. I decide to move in my units onto his third, and then eventually at some point I will move my main army onto his third and second at the same time. So as you can see here, he's got some defensive units, which is great for him. That's really well played. At this point he's discouraged. He says, "GG, you kept me on 3 bases essentially." I kept him on 3 bases while I was able to go up to 5 without anyone stopping me, essentially. I was able to kill these workers, and so, yeah, my opponent is now left on 10 workers, while I'm on roughly 50, so 47 workers, really mining and really being able to continuously macro up and spend this access of resources that I have. So essentially, all I can say is good game to my opponent. He managed to beat me in the game beforehand, which was it was a proxy. He really rushed me at the beginning, and I wasn't prepared for that. But this time, I was prepared for a game like that, and I was able to play a pretty big, pretty long macro game with my opponent. Typically, though, this is something interesting about me. Typically, I like to play the standard style of going for barracks and then going to raiders and then the standard soldier archer combination with some priests and some mages. I like to throw those in there. It's very rare actually nowadays that I go for beast play. And you know, if you noticed anything um, about my beast play that you think I should improve on, I definitely know that I don't have all the answers on the best ways to play some of these unit compositions. But I am always trying to learn. I'm always trying to improve, and especially in learning different ways to play the game. All right, guys. Well, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. I make daily little war game videos every single day. So if this kind of content is something that you're interested, go ahead and subscribe, and that means that you'll be able to see my content a little bit um, more frequently and get to see my videos when they come out. All right, guys. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.